the founder and host of Soulestic Intelligence with the Soulestic Intelligence podcast, which you are watching right now. And today is episode number 31. It's so hard to believe that I've gotten this far. I've been really committed to going weekly. I've been setting the intention to do that, so I'm really excited about that. Um, I do have an announcement, so if you're watching this and you have not done so yet, I have some a new product out called Soulestic Soul Maps, and it goes through your human design, gene key, and astrology charts. And I find the themes and I help to bring those to your attention, bring awareness, and then help you integrate it into your life. And so if you're feeling a little bit stuck, maybe in your vision or your purpose, or maybe even in your identity, these are all places that these are all things that we can work on in that. And so this month, since I'm launching the product, it is only $125 if you purchase it through me. So please, you can go on to or you can go on to Buy Me a Coffee if you want to get it there. I don't think it's discounted on there, but it is discounted on other places. And again, it's a way for you to kind of map out your blueprint and get started on figuring out what direction you want to go in life, or maybe even redirecting. Today we're going to be talking about Medusa, and I know that last week I talked about the self-abandonment, and so this is going to kind of piggyback on that message. We're going to be talking about Medusa, we're going to be talking about abandonment, we're going to be talking about shame, and then we're going to be talking about the pop culture hymnal chants that we're doing that really perpetuate this belief that we have. So, just in the beginning, I know that there are, hi Mike, welcome. I know that there are a lot of different stories out there of who is Medusa. And hi Alex, thank you. Good to see you. I don't think I've seen you on here before. We'll be talking about Medusa. So there's a lot. So Medusa in itself is a very popular Greek myth archetype, largely depicted about being a monster. Hello, Addie. Welcome. My name is Amelie. Hello, everybody. So Medusa, if you're here and you haven't subscribed, please subscribe, like, share, comment, protest, whatever. So there's a lot of stories about her. Like, people really enjoy talking about Medusa. They're very intrigued by her. And so a lot of people don't really know the story. And I've kind of gotten a lot of stories on whether or not she's immortal, or if she's a goddess, if she, what her actual characteristics are. There's a lot of interpretation that goes on with it. But she was a Gorgon, and she was incredibly beautiful. She was one of 3 virginal goddesses that were in Athena's temple. Now, the story goes that she... Are you play game? The story goes that she is unguarded in her feminine beauty, in her feminine power. And so she's in Athena's temple, and Poseidon is like, desires her because she's incredibly beautiful. She's got beautiful hair. She's just looks beautiful. She's this virginal goddess type being. And Poseidon just goes and decides that I am going to take her. So he sexually desecrates her in Athena's temple. And I'm doing well. Thanks, Alex. So she gets desecrated in Athena's temple, and then Athena doesn't punish Poseidon. She punishes or curses Medusa. And that's when Medusa gets the snake in her hair. And So Medusa is filled with shame, filled with rejection. Obviously, you can imagine just being violated and then being cursed. She goes into hiding, and when she goes into hiding, the things that she's cursed with are not just the snakes, but she has this gaze that will cause whoever looks on her to turn to stone, petrification. All right. Let me get my notes here. Kind of all over the place. I was listening to music and getting ready. So, she's in hiding, and then the gods are like, we want Perseus. Hey, Perseus, we want you to go and collect the head of Medusa. We want you to kill her, thinking that he was going to die. Bye. Thank you. Thanks for stopping by. So, so you can see how this beautiful woman was punished, and after Perseus, so Perseus gets help from the gods. He gets all of these items to help him in his goal of getting this head, and after he beheads her, she births two things. One is Chrysaor, which name means golden sword, and that is a son that she bears. And then she also bears Pegasus, which is the symbol of transcendence and ascension, and this like soul flight. So after all of the trauma and the beheading, she's able to birth, be rebirthed through these two beings. And then Perseus takes her head and uses her gaze to go and defeat his enemies. So he uses it to go, petrify all of these people. So he's using her feminine power, the gaze that, causes this petrification. He's using this feminine power to for his own gain, for his own means. So we're going to talk about all of the kind of metaphors of what's going on in this story. So first and foremost, Medusa, who is this beautiful young maiden, is innocent and ends up getting violated in the temple. So, when I'm doing my energy work, and I'm doing my work of helping women to regain their voice, regain their identity, wherever that is for them in their current path, in their current journey, I like to identify, even for men, the inner part of our being as a temple. So I look at that inner sanctuary, that inner temple, as a place where we can go. Now, I like to look at it this way. If you've ever driven on autopilot, chances are you're inside your own inner verse, going to wherever your destination is, because you don't really need to pay attention to the outside world. So you start paying attention to that inside world. And so when I look at Medusa, I'm just looking at it from an inner temple perspective. She's not just innocent and naive, but she has this huge betrayal of Athena by cursing her. So she goes from this beautiful young maiden into this powerful and terrifying monster. She's transformed. So many women experience this at some point in time, and I think that it's really time to start looking at where in my upbringing was I betrayed and violated, and not just from others, but within yourself. Like, do you not love yourself? Which is something that I realized a couple years ago, is, wow, I've just been existing and I don't fully love myself. I'm so willing to basically sit in hiding and almost frozen on the inside. I have a hard time expressing my feelings. I have a hard time doing this and that. And we'll get into a lot of that stuff here. But so she's transformed into a monster because of this one event. So if we look at our lives and we're, looking at clearing these wounds, healing these wounds, and removing them from our story here, we have to look at what transformation caused that. So where in my transformation did I turn into a monster? Either a monster outwardly or a monster inwardly. And a monster outwardly, I would identify this as people who may have let themselves go, people who um, maybe isolate in their own homes and don't go out even though they kind of desire to have connection. Um, I can see it in the way people talk online. If you're saying, like, I don't have any friends, or I used to and I don't anymore, chances are you have some sort of trauma that transformed you, not necessarily into a monster, but into hiding because now you don't want people to see you. Now your survival mechanism of freeze is totally underway, which is the petrification of Medusa, is this psychic freezing. So psychoanalysts call this the Medusa complex, and they they look at it from, this psychological perspective. But I'm looking at this from greater than a psychological perspective and more on a full-blown scale perspective. And then finally, the beheading. So the beheading is the separation of body and mind, this body and spirit. It's like a separation from that. So that is a symbology for Medusa. It's a symbology of decapitating from your feminine power. Now, I want to remind everybody. I think I did it a few weeks ago, but I did a stream on feminine power, like what it is like to be emotionally into your own emotions and connected with your body in a feminine way. And, men can also learn from this. So I want to be really clear about, this is not like male or female. This is energetically, and I do talk a lot about feminine stuff and female stuff because, like, well, one, I'm a female and that's, my main audience, even though I think eventually it's going to be a greater piece. But when we look at the decapitation of Medusa and Perseus taking her feminine power and using it, it's simply like being in a relationship where the woman loses her voice, loses her agency, loses, really sharing what she needs to share with the partner. And then the partner, he gets all of her feminine power. So she's not in her own feminine voice, and he's the one that's like dictating the vision and dictating all of this and that, and is not holding her, supporting her, protecting her. Then he's using her. And this is such a huge, this is so huge in our pop culture, and we'll get into that. I want to just, foreshadow that that's what we're going to be talking about too. So, looking at that temple as the sacred body, the gaze that she does that petrifies is this mirrored trauma of how she feels on the inside. So, she has these snakes in her hair to make her appear monstrous so that nobody comes near her anymore because she's been violated. And then she has this gaze that if you gaze at her, you'll turn into stone. When really that's how she felt on the inside after being violated by Poseidon, after being cursed by Athena to have this gaze that petrifies. Um, it's just this, it's this, instead of being pointed out into the world, which it can be, she's pointed it into her world. She's psychically frozen herself. So when we look at the Medusa complex, which is what the psychoanalysts, talk about, Bachelard, Freud talked about it. Trauma theory really covers it. The Medusa complex, let me pull it up here. So the Medusa complex is, from psychoanalysts, is a psychic phenomenon where overwhelming emotional charge causes psychic petrification. So when we're thinking about this psychic petrification, let's think a frozen effect of an inability to act or feel or speak due to being stuck in shock. Now, this can happen, after a really traumatizing event. Let's say that you get into a car accident, and, even though it may be a minor car accident, it still, like, shocks your system. You have adrenaline going. You have, cortisol that's there to, like, comfort you through that situation. And so you might not be able to act right. May not be in your own mind, because now you're like, oh my gosh, trying to assess the situation, trying to figure out what's going on. So I can only imagine that after being violated by Poseidon, that, she was this virginal maiden, and then all of a sudden gets shocked into this, sexual relationship that she was not willingly participating in. She didn't want to. She was an unguarded feminine woman. She was not protecting. She was not protected. That frozen effect can also affect feelings. So if a woman is saying, I don't feel feelings, or maybe the feelings are coming up in inappropriate scenarios, those are all signs that you might have this Medusa frozen effect. You might be petrifying yourself. And then speaking becomes difficult. You don't know what to say, or maybe you don't want to be seen or heard, because if you're seen or heard, then that trauma is going to happen again. You're going to be violated again. That loop is going to come up, and you're going to have to, like, look at it, and you don't want to. And then finally, in the Medusa complex, this is according to psychoanalysts, the decapitation is not just this loss of feminine power, but it's a repression of emotional expression. It's a repression of sexuality. So if a woman is in a survival mode, and we can look at the nervous system, and the nervous system, if you're in survival mode, you might have erectile dysfunction, or you might, not be able to have an orgasm and enjoy that act, because you're repressed in that sense of your interaction with yourself. So like I said, it's not just dictated to women, this effect, but this is what happens when the nervous system is in this situation. And then the other piece here is the repression of wild feminine rage. Now, when I was younger, I had a lot of wild feminine rage. And then I had a man that I stayed with for a long period of time. And in order to stay with him, he said, you fix whatever is going on, or I'm leaving. And that story stuck with me. And so I still have a hard time now expressing rage, because now I'm, like, a little bit older. But that feminine rage is important, to speak the voice, to feel that emotion of anger or betrayal or resentment, whatever that is, whatever is going in that. I talk about this often, is, I'll take a look at the emotions wheel. And I did it a few months ago, and I discovered that my emotions were mostly in this angry position. And I was like, that's weird. I don't feel angry. It's because I've I've repressed so much of it, of that wild feminine rage, in order to be the good girl, in order to be palatable and not seen as too much. All right? So that is the psychoanalyst talking about the Medusa complex, as they put it. And just going back to my notes here. All right. So that's the definition of it. That's how they look at it. So really, the Medusa complex is centered around this freeze complex, or the freeze response. And it's also, because we have this beheading, because we have the decapitation, we're also looking at dissociation. Okay, dissociation is this mind-body split. So if you decapitate, you have your head, which is like your mind, and then you have your body. Um, but, in that trauma response, if you're going through that kind of sexual trauma, like Medusa did, you're going to want to separate yourself from your body. You're not going to want to feel the horror, the shame of what happened to your body. And so you're going to try and mentally project yourself outside of it. And so it creates this split between identities of, she has this split of being the good girl, that virginal maiden goddess type, into this desecrated, shame-filled woman who doesn't have her virginity any longer. And so you have these two identities, which creates this bit of cognitive dissonance that she is having a hard time responding to. So you're looking at this dissociation of identity with this Medusa effect complex. And then the petrification. So the petrification, hi Luca, welcome. The petrification is not just on the inside. Now when anybody looks at her, they're going to see their own, that's going to be mirrored to them as well. Okay? And then, as we're bridging this myth into dolphins, I know I'm feeling really mermaidy today. So I got my mermaid stone on. I got my mermaid eyeshadow on. Just let's go. But we're looking at also how being violated in, like, being in this innocent, beautiful, desirable, virginal Medusa, we're looking at how that violated beauty became this monstrous cultural myth and almost this identity as well. So the myth lives on. Everybody knows who Medusa is. It's very popular. Obviously, even in the psychological world. And then we're looking at how that violated beauty can really become a part of that personal identity. Like I said, when you're experiencing that disassociation or that cognitive dissonance between these two identities that you have, one, being this, I was a virginal goddess, and now I'm, this shamed monster. She owned that as part of her personal identity and went and hid away. So, the other parts, as we're looking at the layers of this Medusa complex or the Medusa effect, is the trauma is frozen in time. You're frozen in time, so you're always staying in that trauma, whatever it is for you. And there's shame associated with it. There's excommunication of your body. You're separating, your severed head is separated from your body when it needs to be whole and together so that you're a beautiful expression of what you came here to do. Whatever that contract is, whatever that mission is, whatever your purpose is, like, you want to be in that, and you can't do that when you're frozen or petrified in your own psyche. And, there's a little bit of patriarchal influence in this as well, where our society has been heavily patriarchal. The way that the patriarchy treats the feminine is out of balance. And when you're out of balance and you're out of harmony, it's going to cause ruptures in society. And we see it all the time. People rise up in protest. They, march in the streets. They take to social media. Like, there's tells of where a society is. And, we've got to be careful about AI kind of integrating into that, because AI can hallucinate stuff. So don't read everything. Read everything that you see with read everything with a grain of salt, or see everything with a grain of salt, and just make sure that if you're going to hold that in your belief system, that you're going through and you're becoming really aware of what's the source of this, what is, just be aware and be conscious about it. But society decapitates the feminine, not just through this violence. So not just through the sexual violence that we saw with Poseidon on Medusa, but through silence, in that Athena was like, okay, you just go away. Go hide your monstrous self. We don't want you around. We don't want to hear you. So really removing that voice through severing the head. And it's so deep. So deep. So we've got Chrysaor, which is the golden sword, name for the golden sword, which is an archetypal mystery. Like, this, there wasn't really any epic written about Chrysaor, just that Chrysaor was born of Medusa's decapitated body alongside Pegasus. And so her children are born of her neck, which holds literal and metaphorical meanings, right? That's where our throat is, that's where our voice is. But Chrysaor is not, it's more of a symbol, and this rebirth, like this mythic rebirth that we can kind of integrate into the story here. But he's not a weapon. He's named Golden Sword, but he's not really a weapon. He's more of a symbol of sacred clarity and this action that can be taken when you overcome the trauma. So she gets decapitated, but then she's kind of reborn in her children, which is Pegasus and Chrysaor. She's reborn in that, where the sword, like this golden discernment, being able to see things for what they are and say what they are. So discernment is not just, oh, I can see what that is. Discernment is also being able to name things for what they truly are. Being able to pile through and see with sacred clarity what the truth of the matter is. So it's this symbology of clarity. It's this symbology of soul action, soul fight, which is a sword, a sword fights. So being able to really look at that trauma, move through it with clarity, and then take action and not be frozen in it. So that was a beautiful thing. And then the other piece of the symbology was the Pegasus. So the Pegasus is this winged white horse, and being born out of her is really looking at this ascension from that trauma, not being stuck in frozen, but being able to be lifted in a soul flight, not a soul freeze, but a soul flight, like being able to move through it, taking action and then moving through it, taking action and then ascending, taking action, transcending. Let's keep going. Let's overcome the symbologies that are here. So the other thing is that the chrysaor um, is this masculine force that doesn't dominate, right? It emerges because the feminine has been desecrated. So not once but twice Medusa has been desecrated. Once sexually, and then once in a decapitation or a beheading. And so this chrysaor, the symbol comes out of her of masculine protection. So if we look at the story and we have like Perseus and then we have chrysaor, Perseus is this like external hero, not obviously in Medusa's world, but is seen as this hero in the mythology, in the Greek myth. Whereas chrysaor is more of this internal warrior, this golden sword that is going to pierce through the trauma, see it for the sacred clarity that you can, and then is not necessarily dominating, but protecting the sacred feminine, which is what she needed in the beginning, right? As being this unguarded maiden in Athena's temple. She was unguarded. The feminine needs protection. The feminine needs framework. The feminine needs to be, held so that she can be a full expression of that. That mermaid color is very nice. Thank you. I love it. I was like, I'm getting this. So, we're contrasting this external hero. He really helps Perseus, even though he's like seen he's seen as this hero and this warrior and everyone is upholding him, but he really just kind of dominated her by destroying her, right? Even though it does archetypally bring her into transcendence. Once he does that, he cuts through too much and then she's reborn into these two different beings. So I would ask, what if every time the world silences the feminine, and this could be in your own internal self, it unwittingly creates a new archetype to carry her rage forward in the clarity? All right, we've got a couple, I kind of talked about it a little bit, but we've got this dual movement of the post-trauma, of how we're going to deal with the trauma after. And so the Pegasus is this beautiful, winged horse. Very, a lot of people have seen the Pegasus. I think, which movie company had the Pegasus? I remember it in the 90s. It was galloping and it's got these beautiful wings and it's coming at you. It's really this symbol of transcendence and escaping and this soulfulness of being able to get out and ascend out of it. So it kind of creates this poetry of looking at the trauma and being able to transform it into overcoming it. And that's kind of a hero's story in Medusa's case here. And then with chrysaor on this other end, you have the embodiment and the action and the confrontation, and the golden sword being seen as a way to cut through the illusion and really bring in that sacred clarity that you do want when you're trying to overcome this frozen aspect of yourself. So there's a trauma twin pathway of dissociating, and dissociation is a huge thing in the DCM, I think 10 right now. And it's also activation. So you can either dissociate from your trauma or you can activate through the trauma. So when we're looking at what happened with Medusa and what brought her to be this famous and terrifying monster, is that we're looking at our psyche's emergency responses. We're looking at the frozen aspect of the survival mechanism that we have to get us through really difficult times. Now, we're not designed to be in that chronically. We're not designed to stay in that trauma. We're not designed to stay in survival mechanism in our nervous system. We really need to be in a parasympathetic nervous system so that our body can repair and digest and regenerate. And when we're digesting, that it's taking all of those minerals that we're consuming, even vitamins. If you're in a survival mechanism and your body is just like, I'm shot, then your vitamins that you're taking every day aren't even doing anything. It's like your body's just going to reject it until you get into that regenerative state. Okay? All right. So looking at the collective unconsciousness, TriStar, thank you. TriStar, have that little Pegasus. Pegasus galloping at you and jumping into your heart. So right now, the way that we look at this and why I think it's so interesting on why Medusa is such a big myth and it's like resonates in our memories, is because we have a weird way of framing feminine rage. So anytime the feminine speaks up, we have a tendency, and I, myself included, to dismiss their rage, to dismiss them by saying they're crazy. I think about the crazy hot matrix when we're talking about this. They're hysterical. Women were getting hysterectomies often in the mid 20th century. That was like a way to fix the woman from being too hysterical, when really it was probably she was being abused by her partner or her husband or whatever, so much that the psychic split happened, and the cognitive dissonance that happens in that is so deep. And then the other way we frame the feminine rage is she's too much. And I've had to deal with this because I call it Amelie light. Like, I'm like, oh, people just get Amelie light. They don't get the real deep Amelie of all the things that she's thinking about, and all of the stuff that comes with it. Really, when we look at being hysterical, it's not that it's the woman's fault. It's that her system is telling her that things aren't right. Things aren't, there's something out of balance here. And so she starts to get really anxious and worried and overthinking. And then she feels the betrayal, not just of others betraying her, but of her betraying her own intuition. And that can stimulate more hysteria. And then, even further with hysteria, everyone's like, oh, it's just your hormones, or it's just this or that. When really, a lot of these things that we experience, the symptoms that we're experiencing, come from a lack of emotional regulation, a lack of being able to hold yourself in a certain way to be able to manage some of these hardships that we go through. And I'm not faulting anybody. We are like this because we don't know any better. We weren't taught how to emotionally regulate. Heck, even the attachment theory was only brought up in the 1980s, and it really wasn't on the table for discussion because psychology used to be looked at as a pseudoscience, and many people still hold that belief of psychology as a pseudoscience. And then slowly over time, as case studies come out, as research develops, they're like, okay, now we can accept this part because now it's been researched and case study and peer reviewed and all that stuff. So now that is a thing. But all the other things, it's still a pseudoscience. And if you believe in those things, it's like having faith in those things. So when I'm doing my work and I do the Soulestic Soul Maps, a lot of that is coming from this position of there's so much I believe about energy, and yet part of it's faith, but part of it is just this inner knowing, my intuition, that these things are true, that these themes are woven in our lives according to our own blueprint. And yeah, there's not case studies out there right now that are proving that that's true. But I think eventually there will be, especially now that we're moving into this beautiful Aquarian energy of like systems and changing them. And, over the next few years, we'll start to see a lot of that more embedded. In fact, mental health awareness wasn't even a thing when I was a kid, and now it's becoming a thing. Now people are really concerned about mental health awareness, myself included. A lot of people didn't believe in attachment theory. It's just a theory. Um, and yeah, it's still like moving around. Even some of Freud's stuff is like outdated. And so now you have all these newer psychoanalysts coming in and really doing deeper research into it. But before, when it was seen as a pseudoscience, nobody really wanted to touch it. So you had these pioneers and these ideas initiators coming in and saying, nope, we're going to go there. Freud especially, he became famous because he went this taboo route of, looking at sexuality in a different way than people were willing to do. And so he, obviously got a lot of harpoons and tridents and arrows for being this pioneer in what he was talking about. But then also, he talked about it, which brought awareness, and it brought out people like Bowlby, who's done a lot of work in attachment theory and looking at relationships and how we integrate with one another. So when we look at the idea of hysterics or being hysterical, 100 years ago, a woman would go to the crazy bin and get her, have a hysterectomy, thinking that that would solve her hysterectomy. That would solve her hysteria, is having a hysterectomy. Which is crazy when, like, as I'm looking at it, I'm like, it's not that she had any problem with her womb. She was likely having some sort of disassociation in her relationship that caused that hysteria to even begin, where she, like, didn't know where to go. She didn't have the means to go anywhere. She was stuck in this situation that was, essentially traumatizing her, and living in that feedback loop where a man wasn't really holding her. He was violating her. So we really have to rethink about how the patriarchy is going to be treating the feminine, because it has these huge, massive effects. It goes out. And then the being seen as too much. For all intents and purposes, I could be too much. I have a really intellectual mind. I have a lot of ideas. I can pierce through things really easily. but I'll pull back and hide it because I'm like, oh nope, you got to be the good girl. You got to be palatable. You got to be, um, you've got to please the people. They don't want to hear your ideas. Just keep quiet and don't share them. When really, if I go out and boldly share it, it's going to bring the people in that want to hear that message. They're wanting to hear that. They're like, oh my gosh, that's not too much for me. That's like enough, and I want to hear more. And so sometimes feminine rage can be seen as too much because people will be like, oh, I don't, like, some people that can't handle it don't want to hear it. They're like, nope, too much. Bye, I gotta go. And that's fine. Like, I want those people to be. I now look at too much as being a filter for the people I don't want to be around my energy. It's actually a protective mechanism. And then obviously saying that a woman is crazy, which define crazy. I think that the hot crazy matrix, while it's funny, is also perpetuating this framing of feminine rage, as in, oh, you're crazy for thinking that, even women that have, what are they called? Talk shows can sometimes be seen as crazy. I think about the Women's March, where a lot of the conversation was those women are just crazy, when really they were just expressing, not that I like align with all of their beliefs, but they were outwardly expressing their feminine rage, and good for them. Like, I have a hard time doing that because I've repressed it. And so when you're repressing these things as a woman, or maybe even as a man, but repressing that feminine energy rage by not expressing it because of how culture sees it, is going to, it's collectively in the consciousness, because we're all connected. We're all connected. I don't care what science doesn't say about it. We are connected. We have quantum abilities in our bodies, which make us really fascinating, intelligently designed beings. And I will stand on that mountain. But right now, we have even more things going on in our culture that causes this cognitive dissonance within ourselves. If we're experiencing this, if we're holding ourselves back, if we're doing whatever. So we have this modern disembodiment, which is literally, as an allegory to the story, is that beheading. So you have digital dissociation is one thing. So that's another split of our identities. Okay? Identity splits in general. The cognitive dissonance of not being able to. When I was in my first class, I was taking cognitive psychology course. And I think this was funny, but they were talking about the cognitive dissonance, and I had to write this paper on it, of how do you think cognitive dissonance plays out, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I don't even feel cognitive dissonance, like, in myself. I feel splits. I feel different identities, and I'm okay with them. It doesn't cause me any distress to have multiple identities, flowing through me. It doesn't affect me as much. I'm able to snap back from, like, exploring these different identities, and I've kind of joked about it, but it's true. I'm like, I kind of have multiple personalities, and I'm okay with it. Like, it's fun for me to have all these different personalities. But the identity splits are hard for some people. Some people have a hard time being in multiple identities like that. And that makes sense. Like, everybody's energy is different. And then, but that's a modern disembodiment, is having these split identities. So, and not being able to really understand them from whatever perspective. And then the next thing is we have this AI avatar projection where, people are even willingly going into, um, I think it's called deepfake, I'm not entirely certain, but they're willingly wanting to go and have their being and their identity possessed online in this AI avatar projection. And I don't necessarily know how most people are going to handle that or react to it. But we can look at this. The head without a body is like data without soul. Okay? So we want to be in body and soul together. We want the head connected to our bodies, I think, for the most part. We're not sitting in purgatory or whatever, waiting for our head to be returned to us. So as we look at this disembodied feminine power, what is going to be needed and what the story is telling us here is we don't want to run away from it like the Pegasus and just transcend above it. We want to take action, and in doing that, we need to have this new sacred masculine embodiment around us, which is where in my work I help women to reconnect with that masculine energy and not do it in a shadowy way, but do it in a more gifted way. So Chris AR can show up in that new sacred masculine as that golden sword of clarity and action, and a gentle, benevolent masculine that this like damaged feminine needs. Like, we're all fractals. If we're treating our society, if we're treating our society and others in a negative way, like, you're essentially doing that to yourself. So Chris Aor can show up in that sacred masculine protector in soul work, as you're working on your own soul, of taking action and intervening and clearing out these trauma wounds, because we can. And it doesn't necessarily have to be in our own lives. It could be in our ancestral lines, because our lineages are matched to us. I'll give you an example. Yeah, deep fakes. Okay, I was right. I'll give you an example. So when I was pregnant with my son, I was seeing this therapist, and she was telling me about this new emerging idea of epigenetics. And so in my therapy goals, it was to, part of it was like trying to figure, because my dad had just died. And so I was trying to figure out how to like mourn that and grieve that. And, he was Native American, he drank. And so there was a lot of wounding that came from that. Not just from him being absent, but from him also having the wound of being, whatever the situation is with the tribal nation. And so when we looked at that epigenetically and how that affected me, there was a little bit of work that I needed to do for not just me, but for my family line, the ancestral line that I was connected to. And so when you do your ancestry work, you're looking at how many different ancestors do I have, and what are the major influences, and what can I do to overcome those things. So in my ancestral line, it was dealing with, um, genocide, and dealing with being put on a reservation with an enemy tribe and kind of working through that. And then also because of the way that they were raised, they kind of went from this nomadic tribe to being, reserved in one spot. And so it changed the whole dynamics of how they ate, how they lived. And it went from being, living off the land to kind of being codependent on the US government. So Chris Aor can also come through in retelling and demonstrating how important these stories are that the hero myths have erased. So Perseus using Medusa's head is more heard than the actual truth and the symbology behind it. Okay. So I want to move. I don't want to end it quite yet, but I want to move into how to break this Medusa effect and reclaim the femininity. So first and foremost, the important thing is, I'm going to put my thing. It's almost done. I had to charge my phone. Okay. So first and foremost, how to break the Medusa effect is to acknowledge what is petrifying you. So acknowledge you can't thaw what you can't name. Okay, so naming what it is instead of sitting in silence and in shame like Medusa did when she went back into her cave or wherever she was hiding away at. It begins when you start voicing with a sacred expression that was being punished. That sacred expression was punished. And because you believed that punishment, you just took it. Because you're the good girl, you just take all the no's and all the shame and all the arrows. And you sit in silence with it. So it begins when you start sacredly expressing your rage against the thing. What do I mean by that? I had to break up with a guy because I said, where are we going? It'd been 6 months. Where are we going? And he kept on giving me I'll give you an answer, I'll give you an answer, I'll give you an answer. It's like, I asked for this 3 months ago. We mentioned it, recently. You're telling me you haven't thought about it, and now you're confused about where we're going. Well, I can't be around that energy. And I didn't do it in a moment of rage. There was definitely like some decapitation on my end of, I'm not going to put up with that. Like, out. I'm sorry. Cutting it out. So in my sacred expression of, hey, we should be moving forward and we're not, where are we going? It was being dismissed. And I said, that's not acceptable to me, and I can't continue this any longer. So I cut it off. And that was it. Because I know that the person that is going to be partnered with me is going to want to integrate. They're going to want to see me at my fullness. And that was a very minimal, bare minimum need that I expressed. And it couldn't be fulfilled. So I said, no more. The Medusa effect, it thrives in silence and shame. And that petrification begins when you become objectified, and then you're vilified. You're made a villain of somebody's story. You're made a villain. So, think about the situations where you're being objectified. It happens to me all the time in the DMs. People come in, hey, gorgeous. And then they don't get their thing, they don't get their way, they don't get to defile, and then they turn into a monster. They turn into the Medusa. They turn into stone. They call me a loser. And I'm like, well, if I'm a loser, then why are you talking to me? Why are you so upset about this? Right? And then I become the villain. I become the villain, and I'm just like, oh, okay, I guess I'm in my villain era now. I'm okay with that. Like, all right, you came in, objectified me, called me gorgeous, called me this, called me that, lifted me up on this pedestal, and when I didn't give you what you wanted in order to defile myself for you, to people please you, to please you, when I didn't do that, I turned into the villain. And I'm okay with that. Okay. I'm not tied to that. But we're acknowledging right now. The last one that I'm going to share here is one that women do all the time. I've done this myself, and I am working on thawing it, but is freezing to survive. Freezing to survive. That might look like not speaking, because if you speak, you're being heard, and when you're heard, you're being targeted, and when you're targeted, you die. And that's our survival mechanism. Our brains don't know any different. I always say that. That can also look like, so not speaking, not acting. So a lot of the times in some of the women's groups that I'm in, the women will be like, I'm in this relationship with a guy. We've been together for X number of years, and he doesn't treat me good, but I don't know what to do to get out of it. And so I don't do anything. And now I'm talking about it, which is great, bringing it to an awareness of what the petrification is. But then they're still frozen in that they can't get to the next step. And so women that do, I tell them, congratulations for getting out of that. I know how hard it is to feel like you're stuck. To feel like you're stuck in that. If you do anything, you're in such a survival mechanism of freeze that if you do anything, it feels like you're going to die. And maybe you have multiple children with them. Maybe your finances are integrated. Maybe, you own a home together. Maybe you own multiple assets together. And so separating might be a little harder. So you, instead of taking the action, getting that sword and piercing through and saying, you know what? We don't live like a partnership. Either we figure this out or I gotta go. It's not in alignment with who I am. You're not even able to say that because you can't see it. Because you're still stuck in that frozen fear of, if I leave, I'm gonna die. And that's where our brains go. Not that you're really gonna die, but that's where our brains go. I'm not gonna be able to take care of myself. I'm not gonna be able to take care of my children. I'm not gonna be able to live somewhere and support myself because, I'm so reliant on this other figure in my life to take care of me. But they get stuck. They're like, I don't know what to do. And it's always the same. Like, here's some resources. You gotta work that out in your own life. And the other thing is, you can't rescue somebody out of their frozen state. They've got to take themselves out of it. You can't take their agency. You can't take their cognitive agency. And you can't run their sovereign. If you do that, you're trying to control somebody else, and you really don't have any business in doing that. They have to want to do it. Otherwise, it ends up terribly. Okay? So when you're acknowledging your own petrifications in your life, first ask yourself, where in my life do I turn to stone? Where in my life do I freeze? Hashqueen. Hi, I hope that's how you say it. So where in my life do I turn to stone? Is it at work? If I'm at work and I'm afraid to say something because maybe work has created this toxic environment where the leadership is like, if you say something, you're going to be targeted. Oh, Rihanna. Hi, Rihanna. Is it in your personal relationship? Is it in your friendships? Is it in the acquaintances? Is it in your family? Where in your life do you turn to stone? Is it a fear of intimacy? A fear of opening up and being too much? Then you can also ask, when do I disembody? When do I separate myself from the situation? When do I go numb? When am I emotionally numb? When am I blank? Where is this happening and why is it happening? Okay. And then finally, the other question to ask yourself when you are acknowledging this petrification, acknowledging that psychic freeze, right? The disembodiment, is whose gaze am I still protecting myself from? Who am I afraid is going to see me for who I am? Who am I afraid of exposing myself to? Because like in Medusa's situation, if I expose myself, then I get violated, and if I get violated, then I get cursed, and if I get cursed, then I'm banished or excommunicated from the temple, and then when I'm excommunicated, then I get beheaded and die, right? So she's got this storyline that's going on, but whose gaze is she protecting herself from? She did not want any men to see her, and any man that did would turn to stone. That was Medusa. Her curse became her protection. Her monstrosity became her protection. So where are you turning into a monster to protect yourself? Whose gaze are you trying to protect yourself from? Because instead of being that virginal, beautiful maiden, you're now this monster that, you know, when you're the maiden, all the eyes were on you. You're desirable. But now when you're a monster, nobody wants to see you. And nobody wants to turn into stone. So whose gaze are you protecting yourself from? If you want a ritual to kind of open up in this, is go look in a mirror and say the hard things, right? I think there's a trend out there a couple years ago. Say the hard thing. That's what it said. Say the hard thing. And so people would duet it and say, you know, whatever their hard thing was. But look at yourself in the mirror, and you don't have to have anybody in the house. Look at yourself in the mirror and talk about, like, look at yourself in the eye and talk about the things that you're not willing to say. Okay? I did this a couple years ago, and it was really eye-opening. I was looking in the mirror, and I was like, I've treated myself in the past like I don't even love myself, which is it was a huge thing. And I'm sitting there across from my friend, and I'm like, you know what I learned this week? I haven't been treating myself like I love myself. And that was really, I don't want to say it was cathartic, but it was really eye-opening of, oh, okay, well, maybe it's time to have some boundaries, protect yourself, really get to know yourself, and really love yourself. Like, start treating yourself like you love yourself instead of abandoning yourself for all these other people that don't even fucking matter, honestly. Like, now that I'm looking at all the people that I was abandoning myself for in a form of self-abandonment instead of loving myself, I'm like, dude, they don't even matter in my life right now. Okay. And some people might. You're going to have to look at that relationship and really establish some boundaries in that domain. Maybe it's a family member. Maybe it's a friend. Maybe it's an acquaintance that you're just not able to, like, cut the relationship off. This isn't serving me anymore. Sorry, you got to go. And I've had to do that a lot in the last year. Maybe not even a year. But in the last year, I've had to sever relationships because I was keeping them not for the fact that I loved myself, but I was keeping them because it helped me to maybe feel safe, even though I didn't. I was just keeping them in my life. And so I had to really get real with who do I surround myself with. And even like my boyfriend, I had to like break up with him because it wasn't in alignment. There was something there that just wasn't aligned. He wasn't present enough. He wasn't integrated enough. And he was a great guy. It makes me really sad that I had to do that. But at the same time, like, I made a declaration this year that I was going to choose to love myself first. And in doing that, I had to make that hard decision. And yeah, it sucks. It was hard. But I'm holding that golden sword in my own clarity and saying, but that wasn't enough for me. The relationship wasn't enough. I needed more. I needed more. Okay? Now, the next step here, now that we've looked at acknowledging what is petrifying us, now we're going to look at unfreezing the gaze. So when you're gazing, unfreezing that, right? So instead of gazing inside and saying, man, I hold a lot of shame, man, I hold a lot of abandonment, man, I hold a lot of blah, 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 rejection, whatever the thing is. Instead of looking inside and pointing that gaze inside and silencing, you're going to start unfreezing that gaze and looking outwardly. No, sorry. I know that I fear it might be too much, but my too much is just enough for some people. Okay? I want to find my tribe. I don't want to give you a light version of myself. L-I-T-E. I want to give a light version of myself. L-I-G-H-T. Ascended, powerful, awakened, embodied, and available for myself. People like that. They want to be around that. So she who gazes back reclaims her power. This whole Medusa story is about the disembodiment of the feminine power that we hold and kind of just give away that energy. So Medusa got beheaded, and then Perseus picks up her head, and then he's out using her power, her feminine power, to win his battles, to take over. Because the masculine external hero, the masculine needs the feminine energy. And I talk about that in my work. You've got to have that masculine and feminine energy working within your own temple in its own peace, and then the world can respond to that. But really just clean up that inner temple, clean that inner sanctuary up. So when we're unfreezing the gates, the petrifying gaze is internalized, like I was saying, and it comes in the form of an inner critic. It comes in the form of a perfectionist, or even an avoidant attachment, or avoidant of yourself, of building your personal mastery of yourself. Like, you're unable to even look at inwardly and say, you know what, I'm feeling a little angry about that. I'm feeling confused. I'm feeling hurt. I'm feeling pain. I'm feeling heartbroken. And what am I going to do with this? You lay it at the table. What do you think? You don't hear anything. you don't want to just sit there and say, oh, okay, I'm just going to make excuses until I get the response that I want of me being chosen and me being loved and me being prioritized. F that. Like, choose yourself, love yourself, prioritize yourself, and you don't have to worry about the external fulfilling that. Okay? So when we're breaking this, we're challenging our own inner Perseus. So the one who holds the sword, not to protect you, but to silence your power. So we're challenging that silence of our own power, of our own feminine power. We're challenging that. And then we're meeting ourselves in the mirror. We're meeting ourselves in the eyes again. We're not peering on the inside. We're staring and gazing at our own self, but not in fear, not in judgment, not in judgment, not in fear, but in presence, embodiment, reattaching our head to our bodies, metaphorically. We're wanting to do that. We're wanting to connect our bodies together. So, in practicing and unfreezing this gaze, you can eye gaze with yourself in the mirror, or if you have a trusted partner, chances are you may not have a trusted partner. If you're sitting in this energy, you might not have that. Okay? But if you do that just for 3 to 5 minutes, and then see what rises out of that. Just stare at yourself. Just stare at yourself. Appreciate you. Say nice things about yourself. And just hold that gaze. Just appreciate you. And so the next piece we're going to talk about, I just mentioned, is reuniting that head with the body, right? We want that severed feminine energy to come back to ourselves. We want that power to come back to ourselves. So this is agency, this is sovereignty, and we're bringing it, reclaiming it back into our bodies. And we're going to, stitch up our neck. I think it's kind of cute that Sally in The Nightmare Before Christmas, she's a doll and she has her neck is all like sewn back together. So let's imagine we're sewing our necks back together like Sally's. And, psychically returning our head to our body. So the dissociation is that psychic beheading. It's like this mental psychic split. And I've seen it in people where it's happened to them. So you're still able to think, you're still able to analyze, you're still able to strategize, but your body is numb, right? You're not present in your body, you're numb, or you end up being hypervigilant, which is also a form of independence, hyperindependence. Hyperindependence is just saying, if I don't have to rely on anybody else, I can just rely on myself, then I'm safe, I'm protected. So reintegration is going to require moving your body. So embodiment work may be dancing or breathing or vocal toning. So singing, humming, what else? Dancing is a great way to embody. Breathing is a great way to embody. Somatic sessions are great ways to do that. Anything that's going to connect your head and your body together. In fact, I was doing a soul map reading for one of my clients, and her concern was every time I go to communicate, I stumble and think about what I'm going to say too much, and then I end up not saying anything, or I end up saying something that I regret saying immediately because I'm just blurting it out, and I didn't want to say it that way. Or sometimes my communication isn't structured, and so it just comes out as this huge mess, and I want it to be a lot more organized. And they usually have notes when they're speaking, and so they're able to communicate. But in looking at the soul map of this client, I was like, it would be best for you to start moving your body. If you're going to be talking, pace around, to help move your energy and just reconnect your body together. You want that connection with your body, because it's going to make you a whole person. It's going to help you to be more present, to be more, feel safe and secure in your own temple, and you want to feel that. Now, the other reintegration technique is to feel what was frozen. So sometimes grief can freeze us, all right? We can sit in disbelief that something terrible happened. And so we experience that grief. The next is feeling the rage, figuring out how to express that rage somehow. So it's not constantly inwardly coming through as this inner critic, right? We want that rage to be expressed outwardly. If somebody is doing something and you don't like it, that you say something about it. And so it's not really like rage as we would think of wild rage, but it's just speaking up for things that we don't like. And then the other feeling of what was frozen is the wild sensuality that we experience as women. We want to feel that sensuous connection with our body. There's a beautiful thing about being desired. But if it's marred with this trauma and you can't clear it out and experience your own wild sensuality, then, do you want to be stuck in that feeling of frozenness? Yeah. I remember, I'll be really vulnerable here. I remember I think I was 31, and I had zero libido, zero sex drive. I was not interested. Don't touch me, don't look at me, don't talk to me about it. Like, just keep away, right? That was the monster of me. Just keep away. I don't want anybody in my field whatsoever. And I went to my doctor, my OB, and I was like, hey, OB, check this. I think I need to get like some sort of hormonal panel done. I want it done. Order it for me. And he goes, patient, I don't think that's the problem here. I think you're gonna get that test and everything is gonna come back normal. What it is emotional. And I was like, I don't see any problem there. Make with the test, dude. And so he got me the test, and sure enough, he was right. The panel came back, everything was normal. And so then I was like, it's emotional, huh? And I was so frozen and in such survival state that I couldn't even work through that. I didn't have anybody online that I was listening to that's giving me the information that you're listening to right now. And even if I did, I don't know that I could hear it. I don't know that I could hear it because I was so frozen. It's taken me years to, unfreeze this, and I'm hoping that as you're listening to this and you're, listening to the podcast that I'm sharing, that it is giving you awareness of your own self, of where am I frozen? Am I frozen in grief? Am I frozen in trauma? Am I frozen in my rage, in my expression, in my actions, in my feelings, in my voice? Am I silencing myself? So you want to reunite these two, this body and head together. Um, the other integration, so we were talking about embodiment dance, but just this ritual movement of being really slow and really thinking this like uncoiling of the serpent, just slowly uncoiling. It, like this action isn't like when you think about like the big ice sculptures, they can be big ice sculptures for quite some time if it's cool enough, right? It's going to slowly melt. But eventually, as it unfreezes and it's thawing, it like transforms into the puddle. Um, you might even think of a snowman as being that frozen body, right? But you've got to be able to shine light on it, which is like shining awareness on it and warm it up. And there's no real direction of, okay, you know, if you have a snowman, first the head melts and then that's done, and then the body, and then no, it takes off layers of the outside and melts it slowly until it's, you know, maybe it kind of looks like a little funny whatever. So when we're looking at restoring our feminine power within ourselves, the mantra that we want to really think of is, my body is not a battlefield. And the battlefield can be that trauma, it could be grief. You may have lost somebody tragically, and that might be freezing you. It could be being really angry and wanting to express rage, but then being silenced, like I was. I silenced myself. So your body, don't think of your body as a battlefield. That's not what it's there for. It's a sacred temple. It's a sanctuary. It's a place that you know you can return to that's going to care for you. So your body's not a battlefield. It's a temple that others fear of going into. And they should. Only invite people into your temple that earn it. That you are like, okay, you're worth being in my temple. You're worth my time. You're worth my energy. So I'm going to give you that. The other piece of, you know, restoring yourself from this Medusa effect is reclaiming that monstrous part of you. So the stories, you know, the story of Medusa, everyone thinks of her as this monster, not as this beautiful woman. Make with the test. They called her a monster, so they didn't have to call her holy. Okay? So when we're reclaiming that feminine energy within, that feminine power, you have to be touched by these shadowy archetypes. Okay? The ugly ones. The ones that history said, you know, these are ugly, so you don't want to be that. Be the good girl. Don't be the villain. It's in our Disney stories. Don't be the villain. That's ugly. You're meant to be beautiful. And so many people, you know, express this in odd different ways. But as we're reclaiming this monstrosity, as we're reclaiming the monster of these archetypes and really sitting in that shadowy archetype, just fine. Don't sit in it forever. But, you know, just honor it for what it is. So we're reclaiming that fury of the wronged goddess. So she slipped away in hiding and silenced herself because she was excommunicated instead of being furious. Poseidon raped me, and then you shamed me and cursed me, and that made me really angry, and now I'm furious. And then we're also reclaiming the beauty of our own complexity of being in this feminine. Being feminine is, it's very chaotic already. which is why it's so easy to dismiss the chaotic woman as crazy or hysterical or too much or like should be seen and not heard. These stories sit in our blood, in our systems, and we need to like review it. There's beauty in our complexity. There's beauty in our message when we're saying, "Oh my gosh, this is wrong with society." Like I'm just bringing up like red alert, red alert, red alert. There's a beauty in that, right? And there's also a beauty in being pure. And you can be all of these things, but hiding away some to appear as others is going to cause a little bit of systematic harm in your own system. And then there's power of being misunderstood and unyielding. Hey, honey, just give me your phone number, please. Slide in from the DM. Hey, give me your phone number. I want your phone number. Weeks later, I still want your phone number. Give me your phone number. No. Why can't you just give me your phone number? I'm just not available for that. If you want to book a session, here's a place to do that. None of that works. Just give me your number. Why can't you just give me your number? Not going to do it. Unyielding. There's a power in that. You're a monster. I'm blocking you. Okay. Bye. So there's power in unyielding. There's power in being misunderstood. And that's fine. Like, let the people misunderstand you. Okay, you do your thing. I'm going to be over here doing my thing. But you go do your thing. It's cool. So be reclaiming this monstrous, shadowy archetype, the Medusa whose gaze petrifies anyone who looks at her. There's a beauty in that. There's a beauty in accessing that shadowy nature. I was talking to a client today, and they have this shadowy aspect that we were talking about, and I was like, you know, that shadow is also a gift. That shadow is also a gift. So once you overcome the shadow, you're able to access the energy from that and apply it to the gift of whatever it is. And that's really what happens when we look at these archetypal stories and we start integrating the fractal lessons that sit in it and claim the power of each of these things. And there's nothing wrong with claiming the power of a shadowy archetype. In fact, if you don't, it's going to be hard for you to be in the gift of it. You don't want to stay stuck in that shadow, but you also want to learn from it. So let's say that pride was one of the shadows. And then the gift is artfulness. Okay? So you're able to, when you're in pride, you're like, it's my will, my intention. I'm building. I'm the one that should be getting the praise. I'm the one that should be showered with the affections. I'm the one that did this. That's pride, right? But when you step out of pride and you move up into the gift of that, there's something beautiful about having that willpower to create things. But now you're not associated with that shadowy aspect of it, of where it's my will. Now it's a more benevolent, thy will. And you're still able to access all that beautiful influence. Because, you know, a person that has pride, they're just talking themselves up, got a lot of self-love. People like being around that, likely charismatic, likely able to connect with people really easily. Some might consider that a very narcissistic trait, but there's a beauty in narcissism, right? He was staring at himself in the pond, for heaven's sake. He was staring at himself in the pond because he was so beautiful. So there is a beauty, like maybe a visual beauty about the narcissist. But the narcissistic traits aren't necessarily bad or like should be cast aside. There's a beauty in them. There's a beauty in being able to love yourself. Okay? Just when you take it to its extreme, you end up staring in the pond for the rest of your life, ignoring everything else around you. So enjoy that that power in that shadow. Okay. So, you know, in moving from pride into that artfulness is going to be able to connect with other people, because there's things that people like about the charisma and the self-love, that people like to be around that energy. So finding that, harnessing it, and then putting it into an art form where now you can connect with people. Now you can use that charisma to lure them into a more benevolent build, whatever you're building, whatever you're working on. And then eventually, once you're able to like overcome both of those and you sit in the awakening period of that, your ego doesn't even have any effect. You could just see the ego in others, and it's kind of erased from yourself in a sense, to now where it's playful and fun and exciting and alluring, magnetic. So in the work here, let's, if you're listening to this and you're wanting to kind of work on reclaiming these traits, write a list of all the feminine traits that you've been shamed for. Either yourself are shamed for, or maybe others have shamed you for it. So think of being too loud, too sensitive, too much, all of those things, and then speak those out as powers. Okay? Too sensitive? No, I'm not sensitive. It's a power of being able to be in tune with my own intuition and myself, and to see my connection with others. Too much? Maybe too much for you, but I'm just enough to be heard for whatever I'm saying, and it filters out the people that I don't really want around in my energy anyways. So really start looking at what those traits are and the power behind it. Okay? So summoning Chrysaor, which is the golden sword, what rises from the wound, the beheading, is not weakness, but a radiant clarity. We want to be clear. We want to have that radiance around us. So he is this masculine born out of your pain. I shared a story with you guys. Oddly enough, I think it might be King Roam from Breath of the Wild, which is Zelda's father. If you look at an image of him, it looks kind of like the king that I saw in my vision. But I was going through an intense jag of heartbreak. Somebody might call it hysterics. I was going through heartbreak. And this is when I knew that the whole path had started. Like, I was basically slaying dragons over here. And the king comes in, just this animated character, very much looking like King Roam from Breath of the Wild from Zelda. And he's like, enough. I didn't have to say anymore. Enough of the wallowing in the self-pity. Enough of the abandoning yourself. Enough of the feeling rejected. You're not. You don't need to be. Okay? So when you invoke this inner Chrysaor, which is one of the children that Medusa had born from her neck, is you get this sword that doesn't cut you down, it carves you free. It takes you out. It's golden. It's radiating this golden energy into you. And he's that masculine that's born from that pain, that beheading, the disassociation. And when he stands in there, like my king was standing there so I wasn't any longer at war with myself, because I felt like this struggle of being the good girl, but then also like wanting to claim the things that I needed. And eventually I did, and eventually it showed me that you weren't wrong, you were just ignoring your own intuition. So that silence or that frozenness, where normally that intuition would be, speaking up sooner, and maybe it did at a certain point, and I just ignored it. But you don't want to be at war with yourself, right? You don't want to be at war with your power. You want to be in tune with that power. And then our inner crusader can also help us create boundaries, speak truth, because there's clarity there. Cut the soul ties. Get rid of the nonsense that's in your field, and really connect and be present and embodied with yourself. We want radiant clarity. We want that clarity. So this isn't a sword that severs. It's not doing anything that is hurtful. It's just a protector for you. Your clarity is a sacred technology of protection, the clarity that you get. So it speaks when you cannot. It cuts through the things when you cannot even say anything. So really rely on like your inner temple to be that place, that resource for you that is going to protect you from, there's so many things that are trying to plug into you. I'm doing a digital age series, and I've been talking about all these things that we're plugging into. You think that Neo in the Matrix, when he's waking up in the Matrix and he's like all hooked in and plugged in with all of these things, you think that was just, looked cute on camera? It was this visual representation of all of the places that we're plugged into. We are plugged into so much. Our energy is just slowly being drained, and we don't even realize it. We're sleeping. We're silent. All right. I do want to get into some of the music, but I want to talk about restoring our temples. So the sacred was desecrated. Her virginal maiden goddess self, Medusa's, was desecrated in the temple. In her own temple, she allowed that desecration too. It wasn't protected. It was unguarded. There's a parable that Jesus talks about, and it's talking about, I think, a house, and it's like, the house was cleaned out, the demons were sent away, and so the house was there, and it was all clean and, empty, but it was empty. There was nothing there that was protecting that house. And because there was no protection, because it was unguarded, 7 demons came in and embodied it, like made their way into that house, and now they live in that house. It's a parable for a reason. You've got to have your temple embodied with some with some energy in there. Don't just leave it empty. Don't be silent. Don't be disembodied. Like, that is the message here, is you've got to spend time in it. You've got to not just clean it up, but also be in it. Meditate. Anything that's going to incorporate your energy into your own self. Flow state, dancing, going for nature walks, things that bring you so much joy and connect you. So restoring the temple means rebuilding it, cleaning it up, rebuilding it, and then putting your breath and your blood and your beauty into it and protecting it and not letting somebody else come in and shame you and abandon you and excommunicate you and banish you and call you a monster and make you out to be a villain. And then you're like, oh, I'm so sad that now I'm the villain. When really it's like, okay, well, I'm the villain. This is my temple, my body, and you have no say over it. So rebuild your inner temple, not to keep other people out, but to make a place for your own full presence to be. Call your spirit back from whence it was exiled, so that that spirit isn't being used by others to go for their own beneficial terms. I think Perseus went and he like petrified anybody who stood up against him using Medusa's head. He used her feminine power for his own advantage. So call your spirit back. Call your head back onto your body from wherever it was exiled and restore your inner temple. And then place yourself not in that monster's cave where she was exiled to and excommunicated, but in the holy place that was always yours. Your body is yours. Your voice is yours. Restore your temple. Restore the agency. Restore that sovereignty in your temple. And remember, you are not broken. So say, I am not broken. I was turned to stone and I'm thawing now and I am whole. I am fully present in my temple. That's where we're going here. Now I want to talk about, really briefly, I want to just finally end on this. As I'm thinking about this Medusa effect, I'm looking at culture altogether. And I love pop culture. I love singing all of the diva songs, whatever. But when I was doing this, I was like, oh my gosh, we are effectively emotionally channeling and chanting this disempowerment in the music that we're singing. We're embedding these beliefs into ourselves when we sing these songs. So here are some of them that I want to share with you. So it's like this velvet cage, and it's almost like devotion. Like we're so devoted to the guy that I'm going to be a good girl, and he's going to choose me, and he's going to prioritize me, and he's going to love me, and he's not going to leave me. But so one of the songs that I particularly like, but as I'm listening to the words, I'm like, oh my gosh, is by Mariah Carey, and it's called My All. And the verse goes, it's like this erasure. I'd give my all to have just one more night with you. I'd give my all. I'd risk my life to feel your body next to mine. Okay? That song is totally just, I don't care about my own inner temple. I care about pleasing you and about having you by my side, right? Same thing with, and I love the song by Whitney. I love Whitney. However, the song I Have Nothing, which is one of my favorite karaoke songs to sing, is the self-erasure here is, if I don't have you, I have nothing. I have nothing, I have nothing, if I have nothing if I don't have you. My temple is empty unless you're in my field. My temple is empty unless you choose me. My temple is empty unless you love me. So these are these popular cultural hymns or chants that we sing that are echoing this dismembered, this make me whole, to fill in the gaps. It's not sovereign. It's a contingent, conditional wholeness. I am not whole unless you're there with me. So this embedded belief is love means I have to lose myself. Love means I have to abandon myself. If I am left, if I'm rejected, abandoned, if I'm excommunicated, if I'm banished, then I'm nothing. I'm just a monster hiding in a cave. And that is the Medusa effect in music. So if we're looking at this in, a psychological frame, we're looking at the collapse of your presence, the collapse of your temple. It's broken, it's rent, it's torn in two. The object of our affection, the object of our love, the object of the thing that we desire that's outside of us, that external validation causes collapse when it doesn't choose us, and then we suffer heartbreak. And I don't know if you guys have been heartbroken, but it hurts. It feels like your whole insides are just being torn apart. Especially if you love deeply and you connect deeply. It's like, oh, you can feel it's almost like you have this psychic rope like tied into your heart, and you can feel like somebody just pulling it out, and then it's like your guts are like everywhere. It hurts so bad. So that's the collapse. That's the collapse when the object that we desire to have in our field, I just want one more night with you. I have nothing unless I have you by my side. So the object relations collapse when the beloved withdraws. And it's all dependent on that external beloved, whatever it is. Your self vanishes. You don't even know who you are anymore. Your identity collapses. It's not just pain. This is annihilating your own being. Okay? The other, there's tons of them. You'll start to notice it if you listen to the music. But I love ABBA, okay? I love ABBA. I love the upbeat. I love the 70s sounds. I love the dance, disco music. However, despite this melodic, beautiful brilliance, there is this resignation of the feminine in disguise with this melodic expression, this melodic, beautiful music. So there's a lot of songs. I'm just going to choose a few, but Take a Chance on Me. If you change your mind, I'm still here. Take a chance on me. I'm still free. If you change your mind and you don't want to be with her anymore, I'm still here. So choose me. Pick me. And we've been singing these songs for so many years, right? The winner takes it all. The winner takes it all. The loser stands to fall. I'm the loser. I stand to fall. I'm collapsing. Knowing me, knowing you. these are all songs that show this feminine resignation. I'll do anything that you say. Just choose me. I'm waiting here. Choose me. And we all sing these songs. We're speaking these things into existence using our sacred technology of voice and language. It's a very strong technology, our language. These aren't just girl boss anthems. They're not at all any girl boss anthems. In fact, when I'm listening to these songs, I'm like, oh my gosh. I really like the melody, but it's delivering a poison into my system. They're these heartbreak rituals. They're very elegant because they're disguised with this beautiful melody. Music is a great way to deliver this heartbreak and pain. The woman is left, and then she has to make peace with the vanishing of not just her beloved, but of her own abandonment of herself. You see how it works? There's this duality that works into these stories. So this embedded belief is he gets the story, I get the grief. So let's think about this in terms of Perseus. Perseus gets my feminine power by taking my head, and I get the grief of dying because I vanished of my own self. Then the gaze starts turning inwardly. What's wrong with me that he couldn't choose me? The gaze turns inwardly. I must not be lovable. I must not be worthy. She doesn't rage. She's not getting upset. She's like, oh my gosh, just choose me. Oh, if you change your mind, I'm still free. Take a chance on me. She doesn't reclaim herself. Not in these songs. She's not reclaiming herself. She just aches in a pretty way. So heartbroken that you didn't choose me. And like all of the popular ABBA songs are like this for the most part, right? Some of them are playful and fun. Some of them are calling out the predators, saying, and you know, voulez-vous is one of them. You know, that it starts in a dance floor, and then it spots the predator, and he's looking around the room trying to figure out which woman he's going to go and take and use for the night. Take it now or leave it. Tonight is all we get. Nothing promised, no regrets. It's like, okay. It's like just laying yourself out as this sacrifice. The unguarded virginal goddess. All right, so that's that one. So she bleeds in this silence. It's bleeding that's going on. So this is post-beheaded Medusa, who never births Pegasus. She doesn't achieve transcendence. She just lays to bleed and dies. And so, you know, you guys, I always talk about the brain doesn't know the difference between feeling a song. The brain doesn't know about feeling something or believing it. So we can look at these songs as we're doing this chronic chanting. Is this neural embedding? Because remember, it doesn't know the difference between if something is in real life or if something is being perceived in our imagination, in our dream state, in whatever metaverse we're in. The brain does not, it cannot associate, oh, this is real, or this isn't real. It doesn't do that. So when we chronically chant these songs, so be careful about what you're putting in your body. Like, we're talking about keeping a sacred temple here. It's not that I don't love these songs, but when I do play them, I'm very conscious about it. And I'm thinking, oh man, you know, the whole continent of Australia fell in love with ABBA. But why did they fall in love with ABBA? They're chronically chanting these songs that are causing this disconnection. What if that is the reason why people are having such a hard time dating right now? Because our divas are all like, giving their power away. They're chanting heartbreak. They're chanting choosing the object of their desire, which might be their beloved. They're neurally embedding these songs into their mind as truths. Your brain doesn't know the difference of feeling it and believing that song. So when you repeat these scripts, the lyrical scripts, your nervous system will start to code them in as truth. You're not just listening, you're embodying and entraining your frequency with these trauma loops. So vulnerability is associated with losing. Emotion is associated with powerlessness. Absence is associated with collapse. Desire is associated with danger. Okay? So listen to the lyrics of the songs that you love. Listen to the lyrics of them and then think about, how is that being neurally embedded into my brain right now? How am I feeling about it? Oh man, I love ABBA, don't get me wrong. I love 70s music. But I also have seen what the scripts say. And I'm like, man, that's pretty simpy for a girl, right? Here I am singing it, thinking it's fun and thinking it's, youthful and exciting and empowering because it just feels so like I can move my body around. But then when I really got to hearing what the songs were saying, I was like, oh my gosh, this is just somebody fawning over this guy that doesn't even love her. She's just sitting there, oh, choose me. I love ABBA too, you guys. Okay. So really think about that. And, when we look at like my all, it's this willingness to dissolve herself for love. I'd risk my life to feel your body next to mine. There's no boundaries there. And it's a beautiful sounding song, right? Mariah does a great job. Like, that song is a beautiful song. But it's like this willingness to give herself up in order to be loved. Because she's abandoning herself. There's no boundary there. There's no love boundary there. I Have Nothing by Whitney is this conditional worth tied to this romantic acceptance. If I don't have you, I have nothing. I'm done. I have nothing. The winner takes it all is this tragic loser in these masculine games, right? The loser's standing tall beside the victory. That is what it means. And then, I didn't really get into it, but someone like you, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Adele, very famous singer, but someone like you, I heard that you settled down, you found someone, you found a girl, and you're married now. I heard your dreams came true. Guess she gave you things I couldn't give you. It's this eternal mourning. Even though she might have a lover, she still is mourning the loss of this other man that didn't choose her. This is a romantic defeat as an identity. And we're all singing these songs. I sing them too. But let's be really conscious of this echo chamber that we're creating with our sacred technology of voice, of this severed feminine situation. And we all think that, oh my gosh, it's such a beautiful song. I resonate with it. It's so pretty sounding. Okay, is it being weaponized? Is it neurally embedding into your brain and seen as true? And now you're associating heartbreak, some man choosing another woman, not treating you like you should be treated. Are we looking at that as romance and love? Or are we clearly defining what love means in our own lives? Love means that I'm prioritized, that I'm chosen, that, you know, I'm being considered, that the things that I desire and want are being known and heard and accepted, right? So we really need to start thinking about how are we going to break the spell that we're under with all of this music that we're chanting and that we're singing and that we hear playing on the radio and that we, you know, share with our friends. I remember I heard a song by Red Clay something. I'm sure you guys know. See if I can find it. I think I might have it. Red Clay something. Red Clay Strays. There's a song that was super popular called Wondering Why. Okay? This guy's singing the song. Let me pull up the lyrics. Red Clay Straits. Wondering Why lyrics. All right. Let's look at them. She comes from Silver Spoon, Golden Rule, private school, never miss Sunday church, and I come from blue collar, low dollar, out here where concrete meets old red dirt. And I don't know what happened, but it sure don't add up on paper. But when I close my eyes late at night, you can bet I think my maker. She keeps on loving me, loves me the way that I am. She's not just along for the ride, she's my biggest fan. It's a little piece of heaven when we lay down at night. She keeps on loving me, and I keep wondering why. And then he talks about how beautiful she is. But then he's like, I don't know why she loves me. And when I heard that, I was like, when I first heard it, I was like, oh my gosh, it's so beautiful, right? She comes from Silver Spoon, Golden Rule, private school, never miss Sunday church. And then when I started to really integrate what are the lyrics here, because I like to learn songs so that, you know, in the event I go to a karaoke spot randomly one night that I'm ready to do it. And when I got to the chorus, she keeps on loving me, loves me the way that I am. She's my biggest fan. And I'm thinking, this is a male using a woman from the other aspect of ABBA, right? He doesn't know why she loves him. He doesn't know why. And yeah, it's kind of built in this beautiful poetic whatever, but he doesn't understand why she could love him. And here she is fawning over him. Oh, she's my biggest fan. And yeah, we want to be supporting our partners, but when I hear this, all I'm hearing is that he's not returning his masculine energy to cover her. And he's just using her feminine power to lift him up. I don't hear anything where he's like, oh yeah, like I protect her. I love that woman. I'm devoted to her. I don't hear that in that song. It doesn't add up on paper. I don't know what happened, but it sure don't add up on paper. And as long as she lets me, I'll take her wherever she wants me to take her. Doesn't have vision and framework and embodiment into her. He's following her. Fight me. Tell me I'm wrong. Listen to the song again. Anyways, all right. Well, that concludes my episode for today. I am going to go take a break, make some food, and hang out with my son, charge my phone. Going to be going on later. I was going to go on at 2, but I think I might have to push it until 3 because my phone is about to die and I want it to be charged up for my next transmission. But I will be going on later today. If you're still here and you're watching, please consider getting a Soulestic Soul Map for the month of July. They are on special. If you have any questions, please feel free to comment in the comment section, and I will get bacon, egg, and cheese for me. I will go see what I can muster up. But I hope that you guys are having a wonderful day. Consider getting a Soulestic Soul Map, or if you're wanting to do some energy work, I am happy to do that as well. I do have a Calendly where you can set an appointment, or just please reach out to me, Amelie at soulesticintelligence.com. You can also support me as a supporter to exchange some energy. If this is valuable to you, please consider donating on my Buy Me a Coffee. It is in my profile under my contacts. Please also go over to my Facebook, and there's a link there for my Facebook. There's a link there for my Instagram and for my Substack. And so I, periodically put some information out there. But if you feel inclined to support, I would love that. Thank you so much. And Mike, thank you for always being here and listening. I hope you got a lot of value out of this. It was kind of an interesting way of doing things. But I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Catch me on my Digital Age series. Please subscribe, like, comment, share. If you could share this with other people and help me grow my audience, that would also be helpful. It's another way to, do some help of spreading the message, and I would greatly appreciate that. But that also gets you access to, when I'm going live, and getting you updates on that for your subscription notifications. Woo! All right. Well, I'm going to go take a little bit of a break, and I will see you guys in probably about an hour-ish or so. We'll see how long it takes me to eat and wind down. Take care. Bye.